Hi, I'm Kazaya. And this year, my parents shattered a champagne bottle over my head at my brother's birthday party because I wouldn't hand over the deed to my $450,000 condo. And as unbelievable as that sounds, that wasn't even the worst part. The real betrayal? They had already erased me from every single family photo. It was like I'd been deleted, systematically, quietly, completely. They tried to sell my home without telling me, and when I found out and pushed back, they posted a video calling me the traitor. I never imagined justice would feel like an empty house or a napkin, folded like a swan, left behind as the only evidence I ever had a place at their table. Sometimes silence says more than any gesture of love or loyalty ever could. But before I take you through it all, tell me something. What time is it where you are right now? And have you ever had to pick peace over people who share your DNA? If you have, drop it in the comments. Because this story, it doesn't end the way anyone expects. It started on a warm Sunday in San Antonio, one of those summer evenings where the sun lingers just a little too long, hanging low and golden over suburban rooftops, casting long shadows across the driveways and blooming oleanders. I pulled into my parents' cul-de-sac, parking behind a fleet of luxury cars, Teslas, BMWs, even a Bentley. And then, my Toyota, freshly washed, clean but modest. I stepped out in a navy dress, simple, no labels, just soft fabric and a clean hem, pearl earrings I'd had since college. In my hands, a small box, a monogrammed pen set for my brother, Lazaro. Nothing flashy, just thoughtful. I approached the house. Laughter spilled out through the open doorway, light and fizzy like champagne. Inside, the place had been transformed. String lights wove through the trees. A live jazz band played something smooth in the backyard. The scent of cedar-planked salmon drifted from the patio. Every detail screamed curated perfection. It was a party fit for royalty, and it should have been. Lazaro, the golden boy, was turning 40. At the front, a sharply dressed man stood behind a podium with a clipboard. Tight vest, tighter expression. Name? He asked without looking up. Kazaya Reynolds. He scanned the list. His finger paused. You're listed as +1, under the Reynolds family block. I blinked. Sorry, what? He turned the clipboard around for me to see. There it was, clear as day. A guest chart, meticulously organized. Under Reynolds family, Lazaro, Delora, Orville, Thessaly, even cousin Maxine and her 3 unruly kids. At the very bottom, +1, guest of family. I gave a dry laugh. I guess I'm the lucky +1. The guy looked uncomfortable. I can write you a name tag. No, it's fine. I reached for the generic badge and pinned it to my dress. It tugged on the fabric just enough to feel like a bruise. I moved through the house, nodding at familiar faces. Most didn't nod back. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers glittered like constellations overhead. My place card was at table 18. In the back, behind a pillar, close enough to the kitchen door to catch the draft every time it swung open. I sat down. The silverware was misaligned. The napkin, folded into a swan, drooped like it had given up halfway through the fold. I tried to fix it, but the wing just flopped. From here, I couldn't even see the head table, but I could hear everything. Laughter, toasts, the pop of champagne corks. Our golden boy, someone shouted, raising a glass. My mother, Delora, stood next to him like a campaign manager. Our son, she said to each guest. Regional VP in just 4 years. Isn't that something? Not once did her gaze land on me. My father, Orville, glanced my way. One nod, not a greeting. Just a visual check-in to confirm I was still alive. Then back to his scotch. I took a sip of water, brushed the limp swan napkin again. Maybe the seating mix-up was a mistake. Or maybe I just wasn't meant to stand out here. A server leaned in. This seat taken? She asked, pointing to the empty chair beside me. No, I said, all yours. Then the lights dimmed. Forks clinked against crystal. A spotlight snapped on. And now, a voice boomed, a few words from someone very special. Please welcome, Kazaya Reynolds. I froze. My name felt foreign in that room. Dolores smiled, tight-lipped. Polite applause broke out as I stood. I hadn't prepared anything. I didn't even know I was supposed to speak. I walked toward the stage slowly, scanning the crowd for context. Lazaro nodded. Thessaly, his wife, placed a hand on his arm. My father leaned back, grinning like he already knew how the story ended. No cue cards, no microphone assistant, just me, alone. Then the screen behind me lit up. A video montage began. Young Lazaro in a Little League uniform, at a science fair, in cap and gown, handshake with a mayor, a blueprint of his first big project. Then came narration. Dolores' voice, Lazaro was destined for greatness. He's our pride. Orville, that spark, he was born with it. My jaw clenched. No mention of the $75,000 I loaned him. No credit for the nights I fixed his PowerPoint crashes. No thanks for sleeping in his unfinished office waiting for the carpet guy to arrive. I wasn't even a footnote in the legacy. The montage ended in gold script, a legacy in the making. Applause. Delora rose, still clapping, and took the mic. And now, some words from our ever-thoughtful little sister. There it was, the setup. I leaned into the mic. It's a beautiful night, I said, trying to sound steady. And Lazaro, you've always had a gift for lighting up a room. That's when it happened. Delora laughed, loudly. Oh, honey, she said. Wouldn't it be the perfect gift if you handed them the condo key tonight? The room stilled. I blinked. What? Dolores' smile deepened. You know the condo in Austin? You're never home. And now that Lazaro and Thessaly are newlyweds. Orville chimed in. It's just a formality, Kez. You're not using the guest room. Not a request, a trap. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Lazaro stared at his plate. This wasn't agreed on, I said into the mic. Gasps, whispers. Delora waved it off. Don't be dramatic. It's a gesture of love. I could feel the narrative forming. If I resisted, I was the problem. So I did the only thing I could. I gently lowered the mic, smoothed the fabric of my dress, and smiled. Not wide, not warm. Just enough to say, I see what this is. Then I turned and walked off the stage. I barely made it 3 steps off the stage before I saw him, Orville, standing near the dessert table, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed. He wasn't looking at the cake. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was watching me. Dolores stood behind him, one hand gripping a champagne flute, the other gesturing sharply. She just embarrassed us, she hissed, not bothering to lower her voice. She made us look like fools. I slowed. Not because I was afraid, but because I could feel something shift in the room, something heavy, sharp, ready to snap. I scanned the crowd for someone, anyone, who might help. Thessaly? She looked away. Lazaro? Still staring at his untouched plate. The chandelier above us sparkled like nothing was wrong. Then Orville moved. He reached for the neck of the champagne bottle, and for a second, I thought he was going for a refill. But no, he turned fast. And without a word, he swung it. The base of the bottle cracked against the side of my head, just above my temple. Everything went white. Not darkness, just a blinding, searing light, like someone had lit a flare behind my eyes. My knees buckled. My hand flew to my head, already wet with warmth. Blood. Gasps erupted around me. Chairs scraped. Forks clattered. Oh my God, someone whispered. Did he just... Phones were raised. The sound of camera shutters mixed with stunned silence. No one reached for me. Dolores' voice rang out clear and cruel. You ungrateful brat. We gave you everything. I bent slightly, pressing my palm against the wound. The pain was sharp, but the humiliation was worse. It burned hotter than the blood, now running down my cheek. No one moved. Not even Cousin Jonah, who once bragged he'd punch a man for looking at me the wrong way. He yelled, "Somebody call the police!" but stayed exactly where he was. I straightened slowly. My vision pulsed. My dress clung to my shoulder, soaked in red. She's being dramatic, right? A woman near the fruit table whispered. Another voice. That man hit her. I got it on video. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked. Through the crowd of stunned faces, past Lazaro, who didn't even glance up, and out the door into the humid night. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and ordered an Uber. When the car arrived, the driver's eyes widened at the sight of me. You okay, ma'am? He asked. Hospital, I said. Just drive. The emergency room lights were cold and sterile. I sat on the cot, filling out the intake form myself, smearing the ink with the edge of a napkin I'd pressed to my head. The nurse was kind, gentle even. Anyone coming to stay with you tonight? She asked. I shook my head. No, just me. She didn't act surprised. You're not the first, she said softly. And somehow that felt worse. By the time I got to Leah's apartment later that night, I was exhausted. My head pounded with every step. She had left the guest room light on. A towel was folded at the foot of the bed. A mug of tea sat waiting on the nightstand. I didn't touch any of it. I collapsed fully clothed onto the bed, letting the pain take over, not to sleep, just to forget, even for a minute. The morning light seeped through linen curtains like an apology. Soft, almost sorry. I blinked against it, trying to remember where I was. Then the pain in my head brought everything back. I sat up slowly, my scalp throbbed. I reached for my phone. Notifications had exploded overnight. Texts, missed calls, DMs, comments. I didn't want to look, but I did. There it was. A shaky video clip already viral. Me on stage. Delora's voice. Orville's blow. A moment in time edited down to a horrifying blink. I hit delete. Then again. My hands shook the whole time. I went through the motions. Shower, brushing my teeth, changing into clean clothes. I even tried to make a to-do list, just for structure. Then I reached into my purse. My wallet was there. Lip balm, receipts, protein bar, but no key. My condo key was gone. I dumped the bag onto the bed, sifted through every pocket. Nothing. Then I remembered. A week ago, after a family dinner in Westlake, Orville had grabbed my purse by mistake. Or so he said. Thought it was your mother's, he'd said, handing it back with a sheepish laugh. I hadn't thought twice. Until now. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? A cheerful voice. Hi, Miss Keziah. This is Jeanette from HomeQuest Realty. Just confirming our 2 p.m. walkthrough at your condo. We'll meet at the entrance unless you prefer to use the lockbox. I froze. I didn't schedule anything. Oh. A pause. It's under your name. A Mr. Orville Sullivan is listed as the cosigner. The listing account was opened using your title registration. My throat went dry. Cancel the showing. I hung up. I sat down on the edge of the bed, one hand gripping my phone, the other clenching the sheets like I could anchor myself to the world. This wasn't just about humiliation anymore. This was a heist. They weren't trying to shame me. They were trying to erase me. Completely. I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank email. To Marlo Steinberg at lawfirm.com. Mail marlo.steinberglawfirm.com. Subject. Urgent. Hi, Marlo. We met briefly last fall at the Women in Finance brunch. I hope you remember me. I think my parents are trying to steal my condo. I don't have full proof yet, but a realtor just called to confirm a showing I never scheduled. They have a key I never gave them. Can we talk? Keziah Sullivan. I hit send, then grabbed my coat. By noon, I was standing outside my East Austin condo with a locksmith. He ran his fingers along the doorframe. Someone's been in and out recently, he said. Scratches are fresh. Can you change the locks? Absolutely, he paused. Want a deadbolt too? Yes. While he worked, I stared at the door. Not broken, just invaded. Accessed. The kind of trespass that doesn't kick in a door, it whispers through it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The smell of metal and oil from the new locks filled the apartment. I heated soup, didn't eat it, paced the living room, sat, stood, paced again. The silence felt alive, and not in a good way. At 7:42 the next morning, a new email landed in my inbox. Subject. Let's talk, Keziah. From Delora. We love you. This has gone far enough. Please come by the house this afternoon. No guests, just us. Let's fix this. I stared at it for a long time. I should have deleted it. But I didn't. Because even after everything, a part of me still wanted them to be better than this. I still hoped they might choose love. At 2:15, I pulled into their driveway. The house looked the same. But I didn't. The porch swing creaked softly in the breeze, freshly painted. Solar lights blinked along the garden path like nothing had ever gone wrong. Delora opened the door before I could knock. Her arms were already open, her smile practiced. Keziah, baby, she whispered as she pulled me into a hug. Thank you for coming. Inside, the house was immaculate. Almost too immaculate. A tray of lemon tea sat on the coffee table beside a plate of my favorite shortbread cookies. Fresh orchids brightened the space, and the smell of citrus cleaner hung faintly in the air. The living room was arranged like a showroom, every detail intentional. Family photos I hadn't seen in years were suddenly on display. Me and Lazaro at the lake, grainy snapshots of debate team trophies, even a childhood picture from our old front porch. It was all too perfect. Lazaro sat on the armrest of the couch, posture tight, fingers intertwined. He looked up but said nothing. Thessaly was nowhere in sight. "Just us," Dolores said, gesturing toward the armchair I always used to open Christmas gifts. I didn't sit. Orville entered from the hallway, holding a manila envelope. His expression was calm. Too calm. "We've been thinking," he said, "about how to avoid misunderstandings. Keep things clear moving forward." He held out the envelope. "What is it?" I asked, not touching it yet. "Just something to help define boundaries," Orville said, "so no one gets hurt again." I opened it. Inside was a document printed on thick paper. I didn't need to read much to understand. A deed transfer agreement. Soft language wrapped around hard intentions. Terms like internal arrangement, clarification of assets, mutual agreement. At the bottom, my name, and a signature line. "You want me to sign over my condo?" I said, voice flat. Dolores smiled sweetly. "It's just paperwork, sweetheart. You're not even using the space that much." "You didn't even read it," Orville added. "Don't you trust us?" The room seemed to grow smaller, the air tighter. I set the folder down carefully, right beside the tea tray. "You staged this like a reconciliation," I said. "The cookies, the photos, the flowers, like you were welcoming me home." Dolores tilted her head. "We are." "No," I said. "You're inviting me to give you the only thing I have left, the last thing I own that you don't already control." Orville's mouth hardened. "That's not what this is." I stepped back slightly, taking in the scene, how calculated it all was. It wasn't about healing. It was theater. "I'm not signing anything," I said. "Not now. Not ever." Dolores' tone turned syrupy. "Don't be dramatic." "This isn't drama," I replied. "It's theft, with orchids on the side." Lazaro finally spoke, voice low and detached. "It's just property, Keziah." I turned to him slowly. "No, it's about what you think I'm worth." No one followed me when I turned and walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't run. I just left. Back in my car, I stared out the windshield. Then, without thinking, I called Marlowe. He answered on the second ring. "I'm ready," I said. "File everything." The next morning, I didn't wake to sunlight or birdsong. I woke to a silence that felt weighted, heavy. I made black tea and stared at it until it went cold. At 9:32 a.m., I parked outside Marlowe's office. The glass doors, the sleek conference rooms, everything inside buzzed with quiet focus. Marlowe met me at the front with a folder in hand. "They've made a mess," he said, "but there's something they didn't count on." He flipped open the folder. "You still hold the deed to the house they're living in." I blinked. "No, I signed that over years ago." "Nope, you bought it in 2010, foreclosure rescue. The title was never legally transferred. They've been living there on assumption." I stared at him. "I gave them a lifeline. They turned it into a noose." Marlowe nodded, pushing a pen across the table. "You don't have to go nuclear, but you do have power." I stared at the pen, then picked it up. Back home, there was no victory dance, no sense of triumph, just clarity. This wasn't revenge, it was precision. Surgical. Necessary. That afternoon, Marlowe filed the eviction. No announcement, no threats, no warning. This wasn't television. This was real life. And in real life, justice sometimes shows up in a plain envelope. 3 days later, the sheriff delivered the papers. I didn't see it happen. But Lazaro, in true fashion, uploaded a blurry clip to the extended family group chat. No caption, no explanation. Just a grainy security camera feed. Orville opening the door in a bathrobe, a half-eaten slice of toast in his hand. Dolores behind him, mid-sip of coffee. The sheriff handed them the envelope. There was no sound, but the body language said everything. Orville read the document, went pale, then slapped it against the wall. Dolores' mouth moved, fury written all over her face. Then the video cut off. I watched it once, then again. Then I closed the app. That night, I sat alone in the dark. No wine, no playlist, no scrolling. Just a cup of chamomile. Breathing. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like standing over someone. Sometimes it looks like never standing beside them again. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, but something made me flip it over. A message from Thessaly. "They've done worse than you know." Attached, a photo. It was the old leather family album, the one Dolores kept locked in the cabinet, only brought out for show. But in the photo she sent, something was missing. Me. Page after page. Birthdays, Christmas, vacations. I wasn't in a single one. Not even in the background. Not even in the blurry ones. Erased. Thessaly sent one more message. "They've been erasing you for years. even from memory. I blinked. Then again, and whispered out loud, so I wasn't imagining it. Somehow, that quiet confirmation stung more than the champagne bottle ever did. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the screen, letting the photo burn a hole in the narrative I'd been fed for most of my life. Then I typed, "Thank you for showing me what I always felt but couldn't prove." The next morning, I woke up feeling calm. Not peaceful, no, I wasn't there yet, but steady, like the world had finally stopped spinning long enough for me to breathe. I made myself cinnamon tea and let the scent fill the condo. No music, no scrolling, just steam curling into the still air. That's when I saw it. A thick cream-colored envelope tucked into my stack of mail. My name in cursive, unmistakable. Thessaly. Inside, a baby shower invitation. Embossed, tasteful, painfully polite. At the bottom, scribbled in tiny letters, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how far they went. You deserved better. Thessaly." No flourish, no drama, just honesty. And a small, unexpected weight lifted off my chest, like I'd been carrying a stone for years without knowing it. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just sat with it for a while. A part of me wanted to tear it in half. But another part, older now, knew better. Knew there was no point in burning bridges just to feel warm for a moment. Instead, I pulled out my checkbook, wrote a donation to a local women's shelter. In the memo line, I wrote, "In honor of a new beginning." And I didn't attend the shower, because not every story needs a bow to be finished. Some cycles don't need closure. Some stories need distance. That evening, I cooked pasta, just for me, garlic and thyme sizzling in olive oil, the kind of scent that hugs the corners of your home. I set 2 plates, not out of habit, but out of intention. At 7:15, Amina arrived, arms full, a bottle of wine in one hand, a tiny orchid in the other. "You need more green in here," she said, setting it beside the window like it already belonged. We ate slowly, talked about everything except the family. Books, work, a new series she was obsessed with, a half-formed idea I had for a podcast I'd never admit I was too scared to start. She laughed, loud and unfiltered, and I realized halfway through her story that I hadn't felt this light in months. Then I glanced at the folded napkin on the table. Still shaped like a swan, a little droopy at the edges, still mine. And it hit me, this quiet, surprising truth. That was all I needed now. Not their approval, not their applause. Just this, a small table set with intention, and someone beside me who didn't want anything but my presence. Later that night, I sat alone and thought about the girl I used to be. The one who folded napkins into origami armor just to feel seen. The one who smiled too wide at parties where no one looked her in the eye. I thought about her a lot lately, but I didn't miss her. She did what she had to do to survive, but I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. A few days later, a message arrived from Uncle Marvin. We hadn't spoken in years, not since he was quietly exiled from family events in 2014, for reasons no one ever really explained. His message was short. Saw the folder. About time someone told the truth. If you need a witness, I'm here. I stared at it for a long time, because maybe that's how these things fall apart. Not all at once, but fracture by fracture, person by person, until the truth finally has enough voices to echo. The next morning, I drove without music, just the hum of tires against pavement and the occasional flicker of traffic lights through my window. There was no rage left in me, no confrontation to prepare for, just the quiet, deliberate act of closing a door. When I pulled up to the house, the moving truck was already there, parked sideways in the driveway, its back yawned open like a scream. The realtor stood near the porch, clipboard in hand, her tone brisk and detached as she spoke to the movers. They weren't my parents' boxes. Those had either been packed or abandoned. What remained was clutter, forgotten objects, leftovers from people who believed they'd never have to leave. I stepped out of my car. The door closed with a soft click behind me. No slamming. No theatrics. That part of me was done. The front steps felt heavier than they used to. Not because I was tired, but because I was carrying all the years I'd tried to earn my place here. Inside, the house smelled stale. No laughter. No jazz music. Just dust and echoes. The walls were bare. No family portraits. No wedding photos. Even the outline where frames had once hung had been wiped clean. They hadn't just packed up. They'd tried to erase even the ghosts. I wandered slowly through the rooms. No tour needed. I knew every corner. The chipped tile in the hallway bathroom that Mom always blamed on lazy contractors. The scratch on the kitchen cabinet Dad promised to fix when I was 16. The notch on the door frame from where Lazaro measured our heights with a Sharpie until I outgrew him, and he stopped. It was all still there, and yet somehow it wasn't. In the kitchen, something caught my eye. A single envelope sitting on the counter. My name printed in block letters across the front. No handwriting, no warmth, just bold ink, like a summons. I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Typed. Cold. This was never your home anyway. No signature. No punctuation. Just that. I folded it once, then again, slipped it into my coat pocket. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because sometimes even cruelty deserves to be witnessed. As I turned to leave, something made me pause near the stairwell. A low cabinet, barely used, the kind that stored forgotten candles, broken toys, old board games missing half their pieces. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a single dusty shoebox. No label, no writing, just weight. I lifted it out, placed it on the kitchen island, and removed the lid. At the top, a photograph. Me, age 8, hair in uneven pigtails, one front tooth missing, holding a science fair trophy almost bigger than my whole torso. I had forgotten that day, but someone hadn't. And beneath the photo, folded with careful precision, was a napkin. Not just any napkin.
The napkin.
Swan-shaped, slumped at the edges. The exact same one from Lazaro's party. It wasn't a replica. It was mine. The fold lines were the same. The crease along the neck still slightly crooked where I'd rushed the final step. I stared at it, not knowing if they kept it out of guilt or by accident or simply because they didn't notice. But it was here, and it was still mine. I pressed the box to my chest, just once, then walked outside. The realtor raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? I handed her the box. This stays with me. She nodded. Didn't ask questions. Some people know how to recognize grief when it walks past them in silence. That night, back in my condo, I didn't turn on the lights. I placed the shoebox gently on the kitchen table, opened it, unfolded the swan napkin with trembling fingers, smoothed it out, and laid it in the center of the table, like a symbol, like a small, quiet centerpiece made of everything I'd survived. Then my phone buzzed. A new email. Subject: the sale is final. Funds wired. From Marlo. You're free. Just 2 words. But they landed heavier than anything else had. Not because I doubted them, but because I honestly couldn't remember the last time I felt free. I stared at the message, then at the napkin. Same folds, same softness, same shape I once crafted to impress a family who refused to see me. And now, it sat there, alone, still imperfect, but still standing. And somehow that felt like enough. I whispered aloud, they gave me back everything by trying to take it all. The next morning, golden light poured into the condo like it had nothing to prove, unfiltered, gentle. I brewed cinnamon tea and let it steep until the whole kitchen smelled warm again. Then I folded the napkin back into its shape, placed it in the center of the table again, not as a relic, but as a promise. Not theirs to make. Mine. A promise to myself. Tucked into that day's mail was another envelope. Small, thick, hand-addressed. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Thessaly. Inside, a formal baby shower invite. Again. But this time with something handwritten at the bottom. I'm sorry. I didn't know how far they went. You deserve better. Thessaly. No flourish, no embellishment, just the truth. And with it, something lifted. A piece of weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. I didn't reply. I didn't send a gift. I didn't attend. Because some cycles aren't meant to be repeated. And not all wounds need witnesses to heal. Instead, I donated to a shelter and wrote in the memo line, in honor of a new beginning. Yeah. That night, I made dinner. Pasta again. Nothing fancy. Garlic sizzling in the pan. Olive oil catching the light. A meal that asked nothing of me but to exist. I set 2 plates. And at 7:15, Amina knocked on the door again. She came in with takeout dessert and a stack of books she said I had to read. She dropped her bag, toed off her shoes, like she belonged here, and placed a tiny potted fern by the window. You need more green, she said without asking. We ate slowly, talked about everything but the past. At one point, she paused mid-bite and looked at me closely. You okay? She asked. I didn't lie. I nodded. Yeah, I said, I think I really am. I nagged. After she left, I stood by the window. The orchid she gave me bloomed beside the fern, soft, bright, quietly alive. I thought of every dinner I used to sit through in that old house, folding napkins like it was a test, smiling so wide it hurt, trying to be palatable, useful, harmless. And now? Now I didn't have to fold anything to earn my place. I had already built something better. Not a wall, not a fortress. A home. The next morning, the mail brought another letter. No return address. Inside, a simple note card. Block letters, pressed deep into the paper. You've made your point. We hope you'll reconsider. Family is forever. Orville. I stared at it. Family is forever. They always say that when they mean, we get to hurt you, and you still have to stay. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just folded the note in half, then dropped it in the recycling bin. Because family isn't forever. Respect is. And safety is. And love, mom, real love is. And the people who can't offer those things? They aren't your family. Blood doesn't excuse destruction. The quiet that followed wasn't painful. It was chosen. I unsubscribed from the family group chat, muted Delora's posts, blocked any accounts that reposted the Twisted Party video. I reclaimed my attention like it was sacred. Because it is. I started planting herbs on the balcony. Mint, basil, thyme. Each sprout, each leaf, felt like a quiet revolution. Watching something small grow again, tender and green after everything. It felt like proof. Proof that not all damage is forever. With enough space, with enough light, healing is inevitable. One morning, while trimming the basil, my phone buzzed. A new message. Someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. Kazaya, I saw the Dropbox folder. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. That was the third message like that in 2 days. People had started sharing the truth. Not for drama, not for spectacle, but for clarity. And the replies. They weren't pitying. They weren't fanfare. They were real. Quiet confessions. Soft Me Toos. People whispering, I see myself in this. And that was all I wanted. Not to go viral. Not to be right. Just to feel like I wasn't the only one. A week later, I stood in line at the pharmacy. Hoodie on. Grocery list in my notes app. Behind me, 2 women were chatting. Her parents tried to sell her condo. And the champagne bottle, God. But she didn't even yell. I turned. Their eyes widened the moment they saw me. One of them, maybe mid-30s, red scarf, opened her mouth. Are you? I nodded. Yeah, I'm her. They looked at each other, then back at me. One said softly, I just want to say, you handled it with so much grace. I smiled. Small. Honest. I didn't feel graceful, I said. I just knew I had to survive. We all smiled. Then they turned back to their conversation. No fanfare, no selfie, just quiet acknowledgement. And it was enough. That night, I opened the shoebox again. Took out the swan napkin. Held it gently. Then, fold by fold, I opened it. Unfurled it completely. Until it was just a napkin again. No shape, no pretense. Just soft linen, plain, honest. I laid it flat on the table. Smoothed it with my hands. And whispered, you don't have to perform anymore. I didn't mean the napkin. I meant me. Weeks passed, then months. And slowly my condo began to feel lived in. Not staged, not silent. Not like a retreat from war, but like a real home. Amina became a regular fixture. Sometimes she brought groceries, sometimes just a laugh and a warm silence that filled the room better than any apology ever could. We didn't talk about the family often, not because we were avoiding it, because it simply stopped mattering. Because healing, I was learning, doesn't always come from dissecting wounds. Sometimes it just comes from planting new things in their place. One evening, I lit a candle, cinnamon and orange peel, the kind of scent that doesn't just fill the room, it wraps around your bones. I curled up in my favorite chair by the window, laptop on my knees. And for the first time in a long time, I began writing the story again. Not as an email, not as a diary entry, as a script. For anyone who's ever had to walk away from the people who raised them, just to raise themselves. As I typed, I imagined someone else watching it. Someone curled on a bathroom floor, phone in hand, tears tracing the sharp corners of their jaw. Someone whispering to the air, I'm not crazy, I'm not weak, I'm not alone. And in that moment, I knew, if even one person saw my story and recognized their own pain, then nothing was wasted. Not the bruises, not the silence, not even the folded napkin. Later that week, I uploaded the final draft to my YouTube channel. No dramatic intro, no big reveal, just the truth. The thumbnail was simple. The swan napkin, sitting softly at the center of my table, lit by quiet morning light. I titled the video, "They Tried to Erase Me," so I rewrote the ending. In the description, I wrote, "Sometimes the loudest kind of strength is quiet. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it sounds like breathing freely for the first time in years." If you've ever had to choose yourself over the family that failed you, this story is for you. Tell me below, what did it take for you to finally choose peace? Kazaya. When I hit publish, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt ready. Ready to be seen, not as the villain in someone else's twisted story, but as the author of my own. The next few days were quiet, peaceful. People started sharing the video, slowly, organically, not viral, just steady. And the comments? They weren't angry. They weren't loud. They were honest. Messages like, "I thought it was just me. I've never told anyone what my mother did." This helped me make peace with walking away. One message simply said, "I folded napkins too." That one made me cry. Then, one rainy Thursday, another message popped up. From someone I hadn't heard from in over a decade. An old classmate, a friend of a friend. They wrote, "I saw your story. I always wondered why you disappeared. I'm sorry I didn't reach out then. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." It wasn't grand, but it was real. That weekend, I stopped by a bookstore, bought a journal, hardbound, navy. I started jotting down small truths I hadn't said aloud in years. Not to share, not yet. Just to hold. Sentences like, "Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes love looks like guilt." I was the good kid until I stopped saying yes. I didn't know if it would become something, a book, a blog, maybe nothing. But it was mine, and that mattered more than I thought it would. Then, one afternoon, while tidying the coat closet, I found the letter again, the one left in the empty house. And this was never your home anyway. I should have thrown it out. But instead I sat with it, unfolded it, read it one more time, then laid it on the table, beside the napkin, soft and worn now, but still whole. And I thought, maybe they were right. Maybe that house was never my home. Not in the way they meant. But maybe that's okay. Because what I had now, this silence, this space, this soft linen napkin, was mine. Not bought, not begged for, not borrowed. Mine. The next morning, I walked the neighborhood trail. No destination. Just movement. Just air in my lungs. And halfway through, I realized I wasn't bracing anymore. Not for another angry message, not for another lie. Not for someone to show up with a fresh wound in their voice and a weapon in their hand disguised as family. I was just walking, just living, and it felt like a revelation. Then, as if on cue, Marlowe called. "They filed a counterclaim," he said. Of course they had. Delora and Orville were never going to leave the stage quietly. "They're accusing you of defamation," he said, "trying to spin your story into a lawsuit. But don't worry, they don't have a case. We've got documentation. Wire transfers, deed records, voicemails. You're covered." I sighed. Let them bark. Marlowe chuckled. "Exactly. It's a performance now. One no one's watching." Then he asked, "Want to file a countersuit?" I paused. I thought about the bruises, the sleepless nights, the slander, the silence. Then I looked at the swan napkin, still folded, still soft. "No," I said. "They can keep their stories. I've got the truth." That night, Amina came over again. This time, she brought takeout and a movie I pretended I hadn't already seen twice. We curled up on the couch, laughed through the dumb jokes, quoted the best lines before they were said, and halfway through, she turned to me. "You really okay?" I smiled, the kind that didn't crack at the corners. "Yeah," I said, "I think I actually am." Later that night, after Amina left, I walked into the kitchen and turned on the soft overhead light. The orchid she brought me weeks ago was blooming now, vibrant and steady. The leaves unfurled toward the window like they had finally decided the light was trustworthy. I looked at the napkin again. Still on the table, still folded. A little faded now, the crease a bit softer, but still here, just like me. The next morning, nestled in my usual stack of bills and grocery store coupons, another envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a single note card. Tight, tense handwriting. "Orville, you've made your point. We hope you'll reconsider. Family is forever." That line again. Family is forever. They always say that like it's a promise. But what they really mean is, you owe us forever. I didn't flinch, didn't roll my eyes, didn't scream. I simply folded the card in half, once, then again, and dropped it straight into the recycling bin, because any family isn't forever. Respect is. Accountability is. Love, real, consistent, chosen love is. And people who can't give you those things, they're not your family, no matter what the DNA says. In the weeks that followed, I stopped checking for messages from them, muted all their social accounts, removed myself from every group chat I didn't remember choosing. I didn't post about it. I didn't explain. I just left, quietly, deliberately. I started spending more time on the balcony, tending to my herbs. Each day brought a new sprout, a new curl of green. It wasn't just gardening, it was proof that even things left untended can grow again, with the right care, with distance from poison. Then one morning my phone buzzed. A message from someone I barely remembered from high school. Hey, I saw the Dropbox folder. I didn't know. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Fourth message like that this week. People were finding it. The folder. The receipts. The truth. Not through a wave of scandal, but one quiet share at a time. And the people reaching out, they didn't want gossip. They wanted to say, I believe you. Me too. And just that. No one tried to fix me. No one tried to make me go back. And for the first time in my life, the silence felt like safety. One rainy Thursday, I found myself standing in line at the pharmacy again. Hood up, head down, grocery list in my pocket. Behind me, two women whispered. And she still didn't raise her voice. They tried to say it was for love. But she walked away, like a queen. I turned slowly. Their eyes widened when they saw me. One reached out a tentative hand. Are you? I gave a soft smile. Yeah, I'm her. They didn't gasp, didn't fawn. They just nodded. One of them said, You helped me leave my mother's house last month. The other added, You made it okay not to go back. We stood there for a moment. Not strangers. Not fans. Just survivors. And then, like nothing happened, they turned back to their conversation. And I stood a little taller. Wow. That evening, I opened the shoebox again. The napkin was still there. Still folded. Still waiting. I picked it up. Unfolded it, slowly, carefully. One crease at a time. Until it was just a napkin again. No swan. No symbol. Just soft, clean linen. I placed it flat on the table. Ran my hand over it like I was smoothing a memory. Then whispered, You don't have to hold the shape they gave you anymore. And I meant it. For the napkin. And for me. Months. Months passed. And I didn't hear from them again. Not directly. But I didn't need to. The finality didn't come in a bang. It came in stillness. In the morning light through my curtains. In the taste of tea steeped just right. In the laughter Amina and I shared while baking cookies from a box. I started writing again. Not because I had something to prove, but because I had something to say. The manuscript grew in bits and pieces. Not a memoir. Not exactly. But fragments of truth stitched together like a quilt. Stories of what it means to survive the people who built you. To reclaim what they taught you and turn it into something kinder. To grow out of a narrative that was never meant for you. And maybe one day I'll share it. Maybe not. But the act of writing it, that was enough. One night, Amina and I sat on the floor, playing cards and eating Thai takeout. I told her about the letter, the one that said, This was never your home anyway. She looked at me, eyes soft. Do you believe them? I shook my head. No, I think they meant to say, You stopped being easy to control. A beat of silence passed. Then she said, Good. Later, when she left, I sat at the dining table, alone, safe, whole. The napkin lay flat, not folded, not waiting. Just there. I stared at it, then out the window, then whispered aloud. I was always the story they tried to hide, but now I get to tell it. And I meant every word. One final envelope arrived. No name. Just a return address I didn't recognize. Inside, a photo. Me, age 10, Halloween. Dressed as a lion, face painted, holding a plastic sword. On the back, in delicate writing, You were always brave. No name. No signature. But I knew it was Thessaly. And I cried. Because even if it came late, even if it wasn't perfect, it was true. The truth is, they tried to erase me. But they didn't know I'd kept copies. Of every receipt, every bruise, every memory that mattered. They didn't know I'd folded the napkin they threw away. And kept it. Soft, resilient, unbroken. This story was never about a condo. It was about value. Voice. Presence. About learning to say, I exist, even if you won't acknowledge it. And now, I don't need to be invited back to the table, because I've built my own. And there's always room for those still trying to find their place. Welcome.